For this module's mini lecture, I wanted to share this document with you as it pertains directly to New York State residential construction laws. As you complete your readings for this module, you will start to learn of residential contracting requirements and laws and different components of those contracts. And this is a good reference document to pair with that learning experience. This is a lengthy document that I obtained from a colleague of mine who's retired now. I don't plan to go through the whole document. We will focus on specific parts of this document, but I have provided the full document for you to read through at your own leisure and to look at the individual sections that I talk about here. As you can see, this document goes through a number of different residential construction law components, talking about contracts first and foremost, providing examples of contracts and different documents that pair with contracts, and then goes into home warranty law, which we're not going to go through in this example here. In the beginning, the document provides reasons for not having a contract. So it starts off with reasons for not having a contract, and these are more for comedic purposes, more or less. There's really no reason to not have a contract. So jumping down to reasons for having a contract, the most important one here is that New York State law says you must. So every contractor in New York State must have a contract with the owner when they are providing work for them. So anytime there's an exchange of money to do work, you must have a contract to be in compliance with New York State law. So the document explains here what is a contract. It's a written agreement between two parties to perform work. It could be between 3 people or as many as necessary, but 2 or more to perform work. An interesting part here is the brief story of why New York State has this law as opposed to some of the other states which do not have a requirement that contractors enter into contract with an owner when performing work. The document here states that the New York Attorney General felt that he had a choice between licensing and requiring a contract. It was decided that licensing was more difficult to enforce in the courts, so they went with the requirement of a contract. Interesting to note that in most counties throughout New York State, you are not required to have a license to perform work in the capacity of a contractor. There are specific counties, mostly around the New York City area, that do have licensing requirements, but in upstate New York, where we are here, there's no requirements for the contractor to be licensed. However, according to New York State law, they must have a contract. And the penalties are relatively steep for this as well. For technical violations, it's $100, so a simple violation is $100. But when you step up to a substantial violation with your contracts or not having a contract, that increases to $1,000. The next time is $2,500, and then after that it's $5,000 for each subsequent violation, all the way up to $8,500 or 5% of the contract price. So the big moral of the story here is New York State wants you to learn from your mistakes when you have an issue with a contract. As you'll learn in your readings for this module, there are several parts to a contract, and depending on the work you're performing, you may have a few parts all the way up to several parts of a contract depending on the complexity. So first and foremost is the name, the address, phone number, license number if applicable, of the contractor and who you are doing business with. So more or less the contact information should be the first part of the contract. The second part explains plain English, which really is just definitions. So when you're speaking of the contractor, you may refer to the contractor as the contractor, or we, or maybe even us, and the owner is you, that type of thing. Plain English definition all the parties involved and other definitions as necessary. The third part is the time frame of the work. So when the work is expected to start and when it's expected to be complete. And that lends right into number 4, which is the time of the essence that you'll read about in the one article I've provided in this module. This is very important to know that if time is of the essence, there can be significant penalties for the contractor. So don't put in things that may not be true or you may not know of in your contracts. There's a very strong lesson to be learned there. Number 5 is the description of the work to be performed, and then the materials that may be provided to the owner as part of the project. So number 6 is the description of the considerations for the work and materials. More or less, this is the payment schedule, the payment terms, how the project will be paid out. We have, in this example here, 3 options, which would be lump sum, time and materials, and then progress payments. So lump sum is intended to be a one-time payment. So it may be a smaller project where you can get by with one payment at the end of the project. Time and materials, on the other hand, is where you bill the owner for your time, whatever it costs, and then whatever materials that you use, and then they pay you accordingly. And then you also have a progress payment. So the progress payment may be in the form they've shown here as a down payment upon signing the agreement, and then the completion of phase 1, and then the final payment at completion of phase 2. Progress payments could also be monthly. They could be weekly. They could really be on any type of terms that you agree to with the owner. Number 7 speaks to liens, where if the owner does not pay for the work that's being performed, the contractor has the right to put a lien on the project or the house. This is called a mechanics lien, which you'll learn more about in your readings. And really what that is that it puts a lien on the mortgage of the home, so the home cannot be sold or refinanced or anything like that until the owner actually pays for the services that were being done. Number 8 is the notice of the escrow. So the contractor is required to put all additional funds into an escrow account. They cannot pocket the money that's provided to them from the owner or put it into their own bank account, things like that. The money must be directly used for materials or to pay employees. Any excess monies must be put into an escrow account until the project is complete, or substantial completion, meaning that it's more or less complete other than the final walkthrough and approval and sign off with the owner. So that's a big one that a lot of contractors may not know that, and that's it could definitely have some penalties if you do not follow that. So it's very important to have an escrow account set up. It's simply a third-party managed bank account, meaning that the owner does not have full privileges to that account, neither does the contractor. It is managed by a third party, and it is available for use out of either party as they need. Number 9 is the notice of the right of cancellation. So the owner has the right to cancel the contract after they have already signed it. And the time frame on that is prior to midnight of the 3rd business day after the agreement has been signed. So even though the owner has signed this contract, you've signed this contract, technically it is an official document at that point. It's enforceable by law. They have up to 3 business days to cancel that contract. That's important to know. Number 10 is a clear description of any other documents incorporated into the contract. So if you have drawings, blueprints, or specifications, this would be the place to put this in here. We have a signature area as number 11. That's typically at the bottom of the contract, so that would be at the end. You see in this document here, they go on with a few other parts of this contract. So number 12 is copy of contract signed by the contractor must be furnished to the owner before any work is done. That's just to ensure that both parties have the contract, they've agreed to the contract. Number 13 is any amendments to the contract must be in writing and signed by all parties. So any changes that the owner requests, well, these need to be put into the contract. So if they want to make changes, that's fine, but you need to do it properly. You cannot really do it verbally. Okay? It's not the preferred method here. And then 14 is a description of any other terms that parties have agreed to. So here's just a brief summary of change orders. Change order would be that amendment. So anytime the owner wants to make a change, we have a change order that gets applied as an amendment to the contract and identifies the changes and the costs associated with those changes. Trust fund and escrow. You can read this on your own as I go through it here. Here's an example of a contract, or several examples here. This would be a work and payment schedule for the progress payments that I mentioned before. So as you can see here, we have the down payment, then progress payment at phase 1, and then phase 2, and then with the total below that. Here we have a work and payment schedule for time and material situations. So again, like I mentioned, in this specific contract here, you can see that they're paying $20 per hour for each man hour that's worked, and of course for all the materials that are consumed during the project as well. And here's a work and payment schedule for a lump sum contract and agreements here. This is just a one-page payment schedule here. So here we have 3 different examples of contracts, and you can see all the individual parts put together. The parts are not set in stone where they have to go. There's preferred locations where the parts go, but as you'll see here, number 1, number 2, and number 3 are not number 1, number 2, and number 3 that I went through before. They can be changed up. You can put them in really any order you see fit, but it's important that the parts are part of the contract. That's the big takeaway. And again, I'll let you go through this on your own here, just scrolling through so you can get a glimpse at it. There are 2 more contracts here as well. Lastly, I wanted to show you the general conditions that accompany a construction contract. The general conditions are typically what we call boilerplate, meaning that they're not going to change typically from project to project. There are things that we would change in them, but really they identify the contractor's duties, what they've agreed to, and then what the owner's responsibilities are. And they could change a little bit, like I said, but really it's pretty much set in stone. You'll see there's a lot of different titles and parts here. In here we're also talking about the closing and the deeds. So there's potentially the contractor could own the property or the home until it's sold to the actual owner. So those are things that may be in here as well. One part I really wanted to bring up to your attention is on page 33 here is number 12, arbitration. So in your readings, that one article, should I have an arbitration clause? This is your arbitration clause right here. So think about this and think about how you could include it or should include it or should not include it. That's also going to be your discussion this week. So think about that, and you may have to do a little bit more research on it. But I just wanted to share this with you. I'm going to conclude here. This whole document is online for you to read through as well.